This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Good morning. Get woke. Ladies and gentlemen, MIP is COVID free. Free meaning you don't need a subscription to hear MIP every day now for a limited time. While we endure this pandemic, we want to make it available to everyone. So wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, MIP is COVID free and available to you and everyone without a subscription. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to Make It Plain a very special guest. And as I've said before, what he has done more than anyone is take our struggle, our liberation struggle, our freedom fighting struggle, our modern day civil and human rights movement to a place where it needs to be. And that is online and on the internet. And what have you. And his campaigns have been quite effective. A lot of us tweet and post and Facebook and all of that, but he's been able to harness the power of online media and social media to actually bring about change. And that is change that is appreciable and measurable. And we don't know what we would do without him, and we don't know what we would do without Color of Change. And their role is so important, even in this current scenario. Happy to have with us once again my dear friend and brother from Color of Change, Rashad Robinson. Brother, how you holding up, man?
I'm holding up. If you're hearing sirens in the background, it's because I live uptown in New York, and there's I live actually by a police, fire, and ambulance, and so there's constant sirens right now, and so that can sort of mess you up a little bit in the head, because it's sort of all I'm hearing right now in New York is those sirens. But I'm healthy, and my family's healthy, and Color of Change, the Color of Change family, for the most part, is healthy. Good. And so yeah, we're pushing ahead. Yeah.
And in terms of Color of Change family, I mean, there are people. Not only here in New York, but in other parts of the country as well, right?
Yeah, so we have offices. So we have a little over 80 full-time staff, and so we have offices in New York, DC, Oakland, and Los Angeles, and then we have field staff, that don't operate out of offices, but full-time field staff in Illinois, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, Texas. And so, folks literally all around the country. When we have our, a lot of folks are just coming on to using, platforms like Zoom and Google Hangouts and things like that. But for years, we've done our work through various platforms so that we could build and engage. And people regularly have staff members or colleagues on their teams that are in other offices or other parts of the country.
So you all were well poised for this transition into the space we're in now.
Well, no one can be totally well poised when your whole life is being disrupted. And, I don't have kids, but I have staff members who have had to adjust to a life at home of being both teacher to their kids in terms of homeschooling and doing work, people who are, have elders in their family that needed support. And so there's definitely a lot of change, but we are an organization that was founded in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And so we are a rapid response organization born in the midst of a crisis where government failure was at the heart of the sort of impact on our community. And we are a digital first organization, a digitally native organization, in that while we have all sorts of work where we do offline programming, over the last 18 months, 45,000 people have shown up to in-person Color of Change events all around the country, and we do door knocking and things. We were digital first. And so we were always online to offline, not offline to online.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we were online to offline has allowed us to really move without a missed beat, because we, in so many ways, had all of the functioning infrastructure to keep moving, to keep engaging, to keep fighting. And in a whole lot of strategies we've honed and developed over the years to force decision makers to have to listen to us, even if we weren't showing up to their office face to face.
And thank God you've been online and offline. Man, you mentioned Katrina, and that was rough. This probably feels a little bit like deja vu for you. It's like we're living through the plagues. They're just not all happening, one right after the other. But that's what we're dealing for our people, for in our experience.
Absolutely. I mean, like Black America in many cities right now is feeling like New Orleans during Katrina, right? We're not just watching it happening someplace else and feeling outraged and sympathetic, but we are both watching it happening in places like New York and Detroit and Chicago. And then we're also watching as it might be coming to our cities and not getting the type of visibility and kind of attention that it needs. I talk about lots of times Katrina as a flood that was caused by bad decision makers that turned into a life-altering disaster because of bad decision makers. And like Katrina, it wasn't just the flood, but it was the flood of bad decisions that preceded it and the flood of bad decisions that followed it. And in so many ways, that is what we are dealing with Corona. It is not just this virus, which, in some regards we can say is no one could have fully known the magnitude, or many people didn't know. But what we do know is how much our government failed preceding this, in terms of all the ways that the social safety net has been hollowed out, all the ways in which communities have been left exposed because we have made huge tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans and cut resources and funding, and we've avoided providing health care and living wage, to the decisions once we knew the virus was coming, and all the ways in which corporations were put at the front of the line, and families and communities were put on the back of the line. The thing I'm really worried about, Mark, is right, we're seeing how bad this virus has hit places like Chicago and Detroit. And, we're seeing the impact in California, although that seems to be going the other way. We're obviously looking at our city, New York. But in all those places, we have governors that Black people have elected. They're not perfect, right? I have spent more than enough time protesting Cuomo and pushing on Cuomo, and even in the midst of this virus, watching him be pretty Trumpian about criminal justice. And when I say pretty Trumpian about criminal justice, rolling back bail reform without facts or data or real sort of expert analysis, right? That is Trumpian. He's being all sort of anti-Trump about the virus and being very fact-based when he talks about it and getting a lot of applause. And then when it comes to criminal justice and issues impacting race, he kind of turns into Donald Trump and says he's looked at the data on bail. And when we ask him about the data, he tells us, I've looked at it and won't tell us what it is. So imagine that type of behavior from Cuomo, that type of non-science-based, non-structured based, times 50 in places like Georgia and Mississippi and South Carolina and Florida, where our people are living at much higher numbers, where resources have been hollowed out. And so as this virus continues to travel, I am just deeply worried about our people. And it's part of why we have really worked to develop a set of responses and a set of campaigns to hopefully both build narrative power about what needs to happen next, but also to hold government and corporations accountable for how they respond to this impact on our communities.
Right. We do know well, first of all, this started out as an urban myth that we couldn't get the Rona. We were immune to it. And overnight, that has changed. We are becoming, I guess, the majority, proportionately, of the deaths to this disease. And I guess, too, we have to acknowledge, isn't it true, Rashad, that for us, the pandemic didn't just start in the last month. All of the cumulative and generational health disparities that we've suffered as a people brought us here. I mean, this has been going on for years. So if, and in fact, it is true, lack of adequate health care, access to health care, so-called comorbidities, pre-existing conditions, what the World Health Organization that Donald Trump doesn't want to listen to calls the determinants of health. If all of those things are reasons we are dying disproportionately, this epidemic or pandemic started years ago for us, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks want to talk about this like it's unfortunate, like a car accident, like it sort of just happened. Like we don't know how all these problems sort of got here this way, or why is it impacting Black people this way? And it's not unfortunate like a car accident, it's unjust because it's actually been manufactured through a whole set of choices, as you said, around, how healthcare access has been supported and funded in our communities, the resources that have went into dealing with many of the preconditions that kind of track with our community, and what are we doing about things like diabetes. The United States has 3% of the world's population, roughly 3% of the world's population, and about 25% of the world's incarcerated population. That is not a mistake. That has been manufactured because locking up Black and brown people has been big for business. And this is not just about private prisons, which represents a small percentage of the prison population. This is about all the contracts that go into federal prisons. This is about the communities, oftentimes white communities in states, that are buoyed and held together because they have a prison or a jail. And now we've got this virus spreading rapidly through places where social distancing is literally impossible. And then you've got correction officials, which can, in many places, disproportionately be Black or brown, going in and out of these facilities and back into their communities. We already know that the data on correction officials those who, like, for instance, studies on those who worked in Rikers Island, having a much shorter life expectancy than other folks with like similar, pension type jobs. And because of the way in which these environments lend themselves to all sorts of bad health outcomes. And so, there's so many different reasons why this virus is spreading quickly through our communities. And then why, once Black people get it, are being impacted differently. The elders in my community, I used to always hear this phrase, when America gets the cold, Black people get the flu.
That's right.
And this is just a reminder for anyone who thought that there was going to be some pandemic that was going to sweep the United States, and that somehow Black people would suddenly be immune to it. Folks took Black Panther, the movie, too literally, or have been wearing way too much science fiction, or just have are just far too hopeful about what it means to be Black in America. And what it means to be Black in America, it means that these systems do hit us and hurt us more deeply. It means that we need a deep and strong community response, and then we need also the ability to hold institutions accountable. So at Color of Change, we've developed this platform called theblackresponse.org. Theblackresponse.org is our hub where basically we have organized, over 80 organizations around a set of demands around prisons and jails, and are now running local campaigns around the country to target and push prosecutors and governors to do something different. We are, doing a whole set of economic justice campaigns around universal basic income and other things that are, important, but with a racial analysis, fighting around the small business loans and the fact that the ones that just came out in the first CARES Act won't get to Black communities because of the ways they are structured and how all the money was put into big banks that have, for years been, abusive to our communities. And then, the other couple of things that we're working off of that platform is a lot of work around big tech. We for years have been battling Facebook and other platforms. And so, we're on Zoom right now, but just last week we had a meeting with the senior leadership at Zoom around a campaign that we've launched around them dealing with end-to-end encryption and tighter security measures, because white nationalists have been organizing on 4chan and other platforms to do sometimes what they want to do to our churches, to our community events and others, which is disrupt our ability to engage. And they've been disrupting all sorts of community gatherings, not just from Black people, but from other oppressed communities. I know that the Daughters of the Movement gathering just last week, Gina Belafonte and a number of folks were gathering, and their gathering was infiltrated. We are watching this happen in real time, and we're forcing right now Zoom to have to do a set of new things to redesign their platform, because we shouldn't have to take all of our work offline to online and then have all sorts of ways where we are unsafe in ways that we were unsafe 40, 50 years ago, right? Technology that is supposed to bring us into the future is dragging us into the past.
Yeah.
And then the final thing that I'll say about sort of the things on the blackresponse.org is a whole set of campaigns around democracy issues. Anyone who's watching what happened in Wisconsin, where they kept those polls open, even enforced Black people in Milwaukee, where 81% of the new coronavirus infections are Black people, and in a city had people waiting on these lines while Republican officials were walking around in masks, gloves, and full attire because they knew how dangerous this virus is, but yet they were forcing people to choose between their safety and their vote. We have a lot to do in terms of fighting around voting rights, and we're obviously continuing to partner with a lot of our partners like Advancement Project and Lawyers Committee and others, but also running rapid response online campaigns around this, as well as working to get as many people to fill out the census because of just how important all of these issues have exposed the census to be. And so, those are a number of things that we're trying to get people to do, because in this moment of outrage, in this moment of awareness, we're hoping that people take that energy and move it to action, it to action in ways that they can actually do something.
Yeah, no, that's important, folks. We invite you to go to theblackresponse.org. Let me ask you this, Rashad, and I did see what was going on with Zoom. I'm glad you raised that and the other things. Have there been any victories yet in terms of those who are incarcerated? Have you found any jurisdictions yet that have been amenable to the concerns that color change is raising?
Yeah, so there have been some places. I mean, I'm going to caveat that none of this is where we want it to be. Sure. All these places weren't, but Michigan and Colorado are perfect examples of places that have significantly decreased their prison and jail population. Even in New York, where it has not been enough, we are starting to see some release happening. California has started to do some release. In all of these places, it's a lot of negotiation, right? There are the questions about where people go when they're released, and we're having to do this back and forth around, hotels who want bailouts about what are these hotels putting in now in terms of space. in this moment. There's a lot of negotiation about who it will be, and we've charted out folks that should be released immediately. Elders, folks who have less than a year, folks who haven't been convicted of anything and are there because they can't afford bail, folks who are, there's a whole set of crimes for which people should be released right away. But there are questions about where people go once they're released, right? Like families are oftentimes rightfully a little worried about who may have been social distancing really well to now have someone come into their home who has been in a space where they know the virus is ripping through. And so there might be grandmas and grandpas who are not ready for someone to come into their home, given the way that, and so finding places where people can quarantine for 14 days before going back into homes where there might be people that have challenges to their immune system or preconditions. And so all of those are some of the questions that we're trying to also answer, while we are making very deep demands on cities and states that have, had incarceration rates that have ballooned over these last several decades and need to do something.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, the blackresponse.org, and as Rashad has said, they've been doing both online and offline work, but as really pioneers in terms of the digital liberation struggle, and really the most successful at it. This is such a time for color of change. They were made for this time, so you can get involved. You don't just have to sit at home and do nothing. I know people like Netflix and everything, but there are other things you can do. And it's just, and it's not a lot either, is it, Rashad? It's emailing, it's texting, right? People can do that.
Email, there's texting, there's phone calls.
Yeah.
Some of our more active members, we're now putting this peer-to-peer app in there, allowing them to download this peer-to-peer app that allows folks to engage their friends and family networks to help them encourage people in their networks to take action. There's as little or as much as you have time for in this moment. But what we try to do is provide very meaningful things. And so You will never see a campaign from Color of Change that says, tell Mitch McConnell to stand up for affirmative action. Because we know no matter how many people sign that petition, Mitch McConnell will not stand up for affirmative action. Mm-hmm. And so we're only going to ask you to take action where we have a theory of change, a power analysis around if we can pressure these forces, that change is possible. And so we're going to ask you to join us in efforts that we believe will make justice real, not just clicks, but justice.
The steps to the letter from the Birmingham jail, folks, Rashad's following them. Collection of the evidence, 1. 2, negotiation. 3, Dr. King calls spiritual purification, which really was preparing oneself to react to violence non-violently. Clearly, digital campaigns are nonviolent, so to speak, although, as he pointed out on Zoom, it's not physical violence, but there is online violence that we have to endure and be prepared for. And then, if necessary, direct action. And we're doing that digitally with Color of Change. My brother, good to talk to you. Folks, we want you to go to the blackresponse.org, get involved. You can do a little something while this is going on. And I just mentioned, Rashad, you talked about the voting piece. If there are disproportionate numbers of African Americans dying in the states that, just to be frank about it, Donald Trump barely won by less than 100,000 votes, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Yeah. And if we are dying in disproportionate numbers, we've got to get involved. We do not want his failure in this pandemic to be rewarded with re-election because we're not involved, we're not organizing, and some of us, frankly, are dying. So we have to make up for that. We invite you to go to the blackresponse.org. And he's absolutely right. All of these people working in these corrections institutions, sometimes working in those institutions can be as traumatic as being incarcerated in those institutions. A great movie by that Alfred Woodard was in, Clemency. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, no, I saw that Sundance. It was a great film. Yeah.
And that just lets you know that, what she's going through and what many people deal with every day. The blackresponse.org. My brother, appreciate you. I like the sound of that app too, man. I just don't mind talking to you and being your friend. You know, you feel free to give me an assignment. So I
Absolutely.
like to get on that myself. Yeah, I can dig that. I can get some folk going and get some things done. Colorofchange.org, theBlackResponse.org, on Twitter as well, Color of Change. Rashad, love you, brother. Continuing to pray fervently for your family and all families. All right, man. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.